All right, hi everyone. Welcome to our consortium webinar. My name is Iolani L. Bullock. I sit on our admissions committee here at McDonough, and I also manage diversity and inclusion strategy for MBA admissions. We're going to walk through a few quick high-level slides about our program, and then I'm going to introduce you to our two current student panelists who are Consortium Fellows here at Georgetown, and we're going to do an informal panel asking them about their experiences and having you learn more about their time here at Georgetown and going through the consortium process. We are going to definitely take Q&A, and so toward the end, I'll be sure to prompt you, and you can go ahead and type your questions into the chat box so that we can answer them live. All right. So as I mentioned, I'm Iolani with MBA Admissions. I have been working here at Georgetown for about 6 years now, and I'm an alumna of the part-time MBA program. So I graduated last year as a student, and I'm from New York City originally, from the Bronx, and what brought me to Georgetown was actually working on Wall Street and recruiting Georgetown MBAs to Morgan Stanley. I remember the MDs in the investment bank talking about Georgetown students and always saying that, you know, they were so smart and they got the work done, but they got offers also because they were really good people. And that's something that stuck with me. So when I moved to DC from New York City, a job opened up at Georgetown, and I knew it was a calling. It was a place that I needed to be. The one thing that you'll find in any MBA program that you go to is that it is truly a transformational experience. The MBA is not only meant to give you the hard skills, the technical skills, learning about accounting and finance, strategy, operations, et cetera, but it's also meant to transform how you think, how you act as a leader, and your perspective. And the way Georgetown does that is sort of in 3 different ways. Number one, it's a global mindset. You are going to be in class with students from almost 40 different countries. Part of our core curriculum is a global consulting project that every student is required to do, and that is, really plays into how we think about being a leader in today's global world. Secondly, being in Washington, D.C. I am originally from a big city, like I mentioned, but that, really goes into people thinking about where they get their MBA. Being in Washington, D.C. is amazing. I used to think it was just a sleepy government town, but it has completely transformed since I've been here for the past 6 years. And you have everyone from Amazon, Nestle, Hilton, Marriott, Capital One, Under Armour, all the big companies have to have offices in this area. As a student, you get to take advantage of that because you have access to the employers, to the companies, to the alumni that are always here. For instance, I took an elective course called Mobile Apps, and it was actually taught by a person that runs innovation at Capital One. And because he's right in our backyard, he was able to be a practitioner and teach us for a 2-week elective. We have classes where students are consulting for embassies and essentially really taking advantage of our location here in DC. Finally, principled leadership is very big for us. We have Jesuit values that are part of our foundation. And so not just thinking about the bottom line of how much revenue, but that double or triple bottom line, how do the decisions that you make as a business leader impact communities and impact societies? That is something that is very prevalent in every class here at Georgetown. So, one thing to think about for Georgetown is that we are truly at that intersection of business and policy. Being here in DC is very interesting because you are constantly thinking about how, as I mentioned, those decisions are sort of working with policy. And I'm so glad we have Luis here because he has a dual degree with the School of Foreign Service and can certainly talk to that. But in terms of the DMV area, like we like to call it, it really is a great place to get your start as a young professional, a great place to learn, and you have access to so many things going on. And so if you see on the screen, we're located in Georgetown, so the university is Georgetown and the sort of town is Georgetown, and we have different bus stops all over DC and Virginia where our students live. So they don't live on campus. I would say about 100% of our MBA students live off campus in different neighborhoods in different areas. But that's great because they get to experience all that DC has to offer. I mentioned our global business experience, and this is really sort of the capstone, if you think of it that way, of our MBA program because you are required as part of our core curriculum to work with a company outside of the U.S. You will have a business problem that's presented to you. You essentially have to solve it and then go to that country to present your final presentation to them in person. I did my consulting project in Shanghai, working with Marriott on expanding their wedding business in the Shanghai provinces. It was an amazing opportunity, and you too will have that opportunity here at Georgetown. The locations change every single year. The projects change. You can work with a large company like Marriott, similar to what I did, or a startup in, Israel, or a brewery in Peru. It really runs the gamut, and you get to rank your choices of project, and typically people get their first or second choice. You'll hear more from Nina and Luis, but there really is no typical week in the life of an MBA student. There are so many opportunities, not just at McDonough, but at Georgetown. Yes, you are an MBA student, but you're part of the larger community and larger Georgetown family, and so you may be invited to events all over the campus at different times, and it's really up to you as to what you want to get involved in. And so there could be everything from impact consultants, as you can see in the sort of top left corner here, where you're working on, working with social impact companies or nonprofits. You can be involved in your study team meetings. We have kegs every Thursday night to celebrate the end of another week, and usually every week a different club will sponsor it or alumni will come back. Or you may be at an employer presentation looking at summer internships or full-time job offers. Very quickly, our MBA Career Center really prepares you for the recruiting process. One thing that's unique about our Career Center is that they begin working with you the summer before you start, in the summer, before orientation begins. As part of the consortium, you actually start even earlier because many of you may know about OP, or orientation program, and so you are starting before your peers in business school at Georgetown in order to get ready for OP. It is a very intensive process, but we have about 14 different career coaches split out by industry and function that are there to help you, connect you to alumni, connect you with our peer advisors, schedule, different mock interview sessions, resume reviews, all the things that you'll need to be successful. Community is huge at Georgetown, so our full-time class is about 270 students split into 4 cohorts. So you're either part of Hoya, Saxer, Blue, or Gray, and that is sort of your first family here at Georgetown. However, the community extends to the entire class of MBA students. We have 40+ different student clubs. We have student-led treks. So I talked about that global consulting project, which is part of the core curriculum. But if you haven't had enough global, you can get even more. So we have student-led treks. I led one to Tanzania. We had one to Israel, all over the world. We have students that volunteer lots of hours. I mentioned that Jesuit identity, which is important to us from a service perspective. And then you get even more sort of leadership and management opportunity as one of our student club leaders on a board. And so, part of the MBA is really networking with your peers and building that connectivity, and you really get to do that through the club and co-curricular opportunities. So now I'm going to turn it over to our Consortium Fellows here and have both of them introduce themselves. Then I have some questions for them, but then after that, we're going to open it up for your questions. So why don't we start with Nina?
Hi, everyone. My name is Nina Vann. I'm a second year here at Georgetown. I belong to the Hoya cohort. However, this year I've, had the opportunity to mingle with people from other cohorts. So I'm still a Hoya, but, so my pre-MBA background, so my first degree was in international relations, and my second degree was in journalism from Columbia University, and I worked for, let me say, about 5 months in journalism, and then I got the chance to work at the United Nations, where I worked as a political advisor to many countries on economic and financial issues. So basically think like Millennium Development Goals, Sustainable Development Goals. That was really nice, but I realized that I wanted to do something else, and consulting was, one of the things I wanted to do. I was like, I like this for certain reasons. Of course, those reasons kind of like grew and expanded once I got to campus and realized exactly what consulting was. But I figured that the main way for me to make that switch from where I was to consulting was to get an MBA, just to be able to have that business foundation that I seriously lacked. So that was why I decided to pursue an MBA.
Hi, everybody. I'm Luis, Dual Degree MBA, Master of Science in Foreign Service. I will be graduating in May 2020, and I started off as a MBA, and through my first semester, I also was in the application process for the other degree, and I became a dual degree around March of 2018. Prior to coming to Georgetown, I worked at Management Leadership for Tomorrow for 2 years, and prior to that, I was in international development. I worked as an international development consultant in DC for about 3 years, and I was a Peace Corps volunteer in Mali for 2.5. And in that capacity, I worked with a group of HIV-positive women to start their own business, and I also worked with an artisan community to help launch professional skills training for the artisans who had to drop out of high school and really needed to get other areas of education.
That's great. I feel like I learned so much more about you guys every time we do one of these events. One thing I hope you all are taking away from this is that Nina and Luis have very different backgrounds. So many people think, oh, I have to come from business to go to business school. That is not the case, not the case at all. And, as we talk through, we'll talk about the ways that the program supports folks that maybe don't have a typical business background or quantitative background in the program. So how did you both learn about the consortium? Some people, have known about it forever. Sometimes you literally had no idea until someone tells you. How did you learn about the program, and why did you decide to pursue it?
Sure. So I was looking at different business schools, and I would find out about their diversity recruitment. And I didn't know that much about even diversity recruitment, but I would sign up and I would hear about 2 organizations, MLT and Consortium, and I had no idea what they were. I come from a non-business background. Nobody in my family is in business, so I just don't have a point of reference. And I learned about the Consortium, and I signed up to be on their mailing list, and I learned about maps, and that's when I started to really get into it. And I thought, wow, this is really an opportunity for me to have a community once I'm in school, and is also for practical purposes, it's a chance for me to have a streamlined application to different schools that really do care about diversity and why it's so important for corporate America.
And Nina, your process is a little bit different.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so like Iolani rightfully said, my process was different. I think it's almost impossible for you to be looking to apply for an MBA program as a minority and not know about MLT or Consortium. So yeah, I did know about the both of them, when I was thinking about different schools. And my goal at that time for even going to the Consortium's website was, as Luis said, the streamlined process, and also looking for a way to get scholarship money. However, when I looked at all the schools, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is so great. Like, I could apply to like 5 schools, and I could just do it in like, one attempt or whatever. When I looked at the application process and it asked for community work or social community service for minorities or impacting minorities, I thought about my past experience, and I was like, well, I've done a lot of community work, but I don't think I have any story to that effect of like actually impacting, Asian Americans or Latin Americans or African Americans. I couldn't find such a story, so I kind of like checked myself out of the process, and I said, well, I can't apply through the consortium because I don't have a story. So I'm just going to apply by myself to all the schools I wanted to apply to, and I did. Now, let's fast forward. I finally got into Georgetown, and then I was having a conversation with Ann Kilby, and who is she's I think the head of admissions, and she referred me. Basically, she said, well, did you apply through the consortium? I said, no, I applied on my own. She's like, well, the consortium would be a great opportunity, a great organization for you to join. Have you ever thought about it? I was like, yeah, I explained why I didn't apply. But then she said, well, we can refer you from Georgetown. I was like, really? That's possible. However, the downside was I did not qualify to get any financial support, financial aid. So at that point in time, the lens through which I was looking at the consortium was an organization for community. I felt like it would be almost like killing myself to come to business school without having a community. I mean, yesterday was my birthday, and the consortium threw me a surprise birthday party and a baby shower. So, like, these are things that you get as a member of the consortium that you don't even know from the beginning. But that was how I joined the consortium. It's very untraditional, but it's possible.
Yeah, and that's a great point. You know, don't check yourself out. You know, come and ask us and say, hey, I'm not sure if I qualify, and we can look at your application like Ann did with Nina to say, actually, you do qualify, or have you thought about, you know, these specific things that can help you get into the consortium, because first you have to become a member of the consortium, and then you can become a fellow through the different schools. But if you are on the fence about the consortium, talk to us. We're more than happy to chat with you, or feel free to reach out to the consortium directly. But it is such a great network that folks should be a part of, because it gives you just another family, another career opportunity, another base of alumni for you to reach out to throughout your MBA career. So when you were evaluating schools, what made Georgetown stand out to you, and what were like the criteria that you said, my school has to have X, Y, and Z, or these are my non-negotiables for me to go to XYZ school?
Sure. So for me, a non-negotiable was actually cultural fit, because, you know, I'm not going to say that rankings are not important, they are, but I also believe that you are really going to shine in a place whose identity speaks to your own. You know, I grew up in 6 different countries. I was raised by 3 different bicultural families. And so being in a place that really cared a lot about having a global mindset and being diverse was important. And I know that in Georgetown it wasn't just marketing talk. It really is integrated in the curriculum and in the experiences. Number 2, I really liked how Georgetown had that Jesuit identity. I felt that it really does care about the values of, you know, care for the whole person and being men and women for others, that I think is very substantive and is important as you go through your careers, whether that's going to be in business or in government or whatever you wish. And then third, it has a very strong alumni network, not only in DC and New York, but globally as well. And personally, I really enjoy being in the East Coast. But let's say, for instance, you want to be, I don't know, in Texas or in the West Coast. I mean, Georgetown has a strong brand in those places as well. So those 3 main things were what I was considering.
Yeah, so this is Nina again. So for me, I'm just going to reiterate like what Luis said. So my mom was a diplomat, and I got to travel a lot when I was a child in, you know, my formative years. I picked up another language. I was developed having a global mindset. So when it was time for me to choose a career, I wanted to work at the intersection of government and international development and, you know, business and impact and things like that. Makes sense why I worked at the United Nations. So when I wanted to make the switch to business school, I was thinking, well, it would be nice to go to like HBS or Wharton, you know, all the typical traditional old business schools. But I had to think about a school that resonated with me, who I was personally. Yeah, I could do well at HBS or Wharton or whatever, but would I be a good fit there? I'm not like a typical quant. I'm not a typical poet. I'm like a quant that wants to do good in the world. I'm like a quant that's, you know, deep and introspective. So I was thinking about like what kind of school would make sense for me. And Georgetown just happened to, you know, fill in that gap. Now, I would say DC itself is beautiful. It's a hub, and Georgetown is DC. DC is Georgetown University. However, we have alums and job opportunities everywhere. Like, all our classmates come from different parts of the country, from like Iowa to, I don't know, like, you know, Maine, you know, whatever it is. You know, we have people from different parts of the world, from Australia to, I don't know, India to South Africa to Uganda, different places. So just being in that kind of melting pot is very, very intellectually stimulating. And also the teaching for impact. I notice here, I don't know how it is at other business schools, but our typical quant professors actually take time to just segue from the traditional teaching to push us to do well and do good in the world. You know, they just remind us that we're humans. Yeah, we're going to consulting and finance or whatever. By the way, most of our classmates do go into consulting and finance, but it reminds us to have that human aspect in whatever it is that we plan to do for the future. So I think that's the unique advantage of being here.
Yeah, it's so funny you say that, because I remember in one of my core finance classes, I don't know if you guys had this case study, but we did a case on Tanzanian coffee bean farmers, Arabica bean farmers, and you had to structure insurance payments for them. And I think the way we did it, there were like 2 tiers of farmers. One had like higher income and lower income, and it was much easier to structure payments for the higher income farmers. But the professor stopped every single student and said, I'm going to push you to be creative and think outside the box, because who needs the insurance more? The lower income farmers. And so, you know, even in a very traditional, typical quant course like finance, we're being pushed to think about that triple or double bottom line about the community and the people that you're actually serving.
Yeah, and I would say that that's actually very relevant for the business times that we're in. I mean, I don't know if you know about BlackRock, but they're the largest asset manager in the world. And the CEO sent out a notice saying that business leaders need to pay more attention to their impact in communities as well. So when we're talking about social impact, it's not just a feel-good thing. It's very relevant for the times we're living in. And with regards to professional opportunities, I don't know if you know about this, but we actually ranked as the most employable graduates across top MBA programs by Bloomberg Business Week. I mean, across the rankings, we're moving up.
Yeah, no, definitely. So let's switch back to Consortium again. So as many of you know, OP is the orientation program, and OP is pretty intense. It doesn't matter what consortium school you go to, everyone goes to OP, so it's so great because you get to meet your fellow consortium folks from every single school that are part of the organization. Can you talk about some of the preparation prior to OP, how the Career Center helped you, or maybe second years and alums, and then what that experience was like going through it?
Yeah. So OP was very intense, and the preparation for it was taking up a good deal of my time over the summer, and it was so worth it. I cannot highlight that enough, because before going to OP, you're going to get a call or an email from the Career Center, and they're going to give you tasks to help you craft your story and to help you, shape your CV, identify who you're going to look at, and you're going to be ahead of your classmates by going through this process. I remember, one of my fellow consortium mates, he had 5 offers by the time he arrived on campus.
Wow.
And he had 5 offers. Me personally, I had greater clarity. At the time, I was thinking about consulting, but actually going through the process, I realized that consulting wasn't going to be the best fit for me, even if I could recruit successfully. And that saved a lot of time in my first semester. I had more clarity. And I remember one time I was doing a mock behavioral interview with the head of admissions and a bunch of other people, and she kind of turned to me at the end and said, I know you got a lot of practice in this, I could tell. So it's really going to show if you take advantage. It may be kind of intense, and during the summer you may want to just chill out a bit, and you should, but putting that legwork early on is going to help you a lot.
Yeah, so I think the opportunity to attend OP actually gives you a leg up in terms of your classmates, because as Luis said, during the summer, you're trained in answering questions like, tell me about yourself, tell me about a time when this, walk me through your resume. So if you've never had to consider those questions before, you're going to learn to do those by May, June, as opposed to your classmates coming in and learning to do that by October, November, which is already the middle of interview season. Now, of course, OP is super intense. It's 5 days, and for me, it felt like 2 weeks. And it was so stressful. I was so exhausted because, the build up towards it, and then just going there and bringing your A game and meeting all these employers and meeting all these people from different schools. I mean, it was super intense, but it was so worth it, and it was so fun. Consortium, they actually do a great job of making it such a pleasurable experience. So I think even if you're not sure about what career path you want to pursue, just make sure you have the basics prepared, and when you go to OP, go there with an objective, and yeah, you'll be successful either way.
Yeah, and that's, a great point. OP can help you gain further clarity, and importantly, it can help you weed things out, so you're not spending the time thinking about XYZ company or a specific role during the school year when you're then juggling recruiting as well as your classwork. So OP almost front loads this a bit for folks who, may want an early internship offer or are successful in that process. So, you went through OP, you found your Georgetown Consortium family, then you came to campus. What was that first experience like? Everyone else maybe didn't know each other, but all 30 of you came as a posse and were going through orientation together.
It was really nice, typically you would come to school on the first day and not know anyone. I mean, not like we super knew ourselves, but it wasn't like the initial first greeting. We're like, hey, Sophia, hey, this person, that person. I started to feel more comfortable on the first day as opposed to if I'd come here and not known anyone. I've been sat with a couple of OP, consortium people on the first year of orientation, but it was definitely nice to just know these people. And now in retrospect, I see that was the beginning of my community. And, it was also great to talk about our offers because sometimes you don't even know, who got what or what got who. Mm-hmm. But on the first day, you're, talking about different things. And to be honest, a lot of us deviated from whatever path that we followed, during OP or during the consortium. Some people got offers that they never took because they realized they wanted to do something else. But it's just the ability to go through the journey with those people from day one and, finally close out graduation day that I think is, can't be overstated.
Yeah, I would just add to that and say, when you start your MBA at Georgetown, you're going to go through this thing called opening term, and it can be pretty intense. And it's so useful to be with a group of people who not only are sharing that experience with you, but actually can help you out. I don't think I would have gone through opening term if it weren't for my fellow consortium mates. So I didn't have a background in business, as I mentioned earlier. In orientation, opening term, you learn about accounting. And so I was fortunate to rely on the help of people who knew accounting within the consortium class, who helped me walk through the concepts. And I was able to help some of them with another class called Structures of Global Industries. And that kind of fit my own background. So there was kind of a give and take in which we were supporting each other. And it's nice to know that you have a community during what could be a very intense period.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then can you talk a little bit about your Georgetown community outside of the consortium? So I know both of you are involved in clubs and different things. Sort of how has that experience added to your time here at Georgetown?
Sure. So it is important to really reach out to people outside of your consortium class and reach out to people who are different from you in all areas, whether that's, your functional background, job, your career prospects, your ethnicity. I think that there are a lot of opportunities for that. I've developed relationships with people who I didn't think I would. So I was active in Net Impact. I was a board fellows member. I was in the finance club. I sat on the board there. I sat on the board of the Emerging Markets Network, and I got to speak to people who just were very different from me, and I've developed friendships from that.
Yes, I think it's very important to remain fluid all through your time in business school, but being successfully fluid is dependent on how well you know your objectives. So for me, it was really important that I was very involved in a women's organization, like a community type organization. Turned out I was elected president of Georgetown Women in Business Organization. It was also very important that I joined the consulting club. I also joined the finance club because in the beginning I was thinking consulting, finance. I'm also a member of the Net Impact organization. And finally, I'm a peer advisor. So through these different mediums, I've been able to meet and interact with different people at different points in time. Now, I would say, though, that the people I spend most of my time with either happen to be like a group of people within the consortium or just, people who are even outside any of these clubs that I've mentioned. But, just having that community that's there for you and you can always fall back on, it's as I said, it can't be overstated. But then still be open to making friends and, meeting other people outside these different groups when you can.
Great.
Yeah.
Now, can you guys talk about your summer internships? I feel like, for the full-time program, you come in, you're, meeting people, but that is really the first thing that you need to do and get ready for. So you, went through OP and got prepared earlier, but what were your internships like, and, what was that experience like for you?
So I had a few offers from OP that I never signed, I never took. I ended up recruiting while on campus, and my internship was at Parthenon, so EY Parthenon, and I worked in M&A strategy management consulting. My internship was super intense. I didn't come from a quant background. Most of the students do come from quant backgrounds, but there's people like us, me and Luis, who do not ever depend on them to, help us. But, my internship was super, super intense because of that. But I did learn, and of course, every day felt like I was drinking from a fire hose, but I had a very open mind and good attitude and curiosity, and that helped me sail through. So I was stationed out of the Tyson's office. I mean, you don't have to be there. I think I was like the only person in my practice who chose to be at Tyson's because I had a toddler at the time, and I didn't want to, switch up her schedule just for 3 months. However, most of my classmates interned in the same practice in the San Francisco office, New York, Chicago, Houston, Boston, Dallas, different places. However, I was never in that office. I was working out of Boston. I was in Richmond. I was in New York. I was in Chicago. So, I think my internship was super interesting, super intense, but I think I'm going back, yeah.
So my experience is a little different by virtue of being a dual degree. I've had 2 summer internships. First one was in corporate finance at Pfizer, New York, and I spent most of it in New York City, and I spent the last 3 weeks working in the Bogota, Colombia office of Pfizer. My last internship was as an equity research associate at a bank in Sweden. It's the largest bank in the Scandinavia area, and the great thing about being at Georgetown is that you have so much international opportunities that sometimes a lot of people don't even know about, but it's going to be up to you to find those resources, but they're there. And I had a chance to intern at Sweden doing equity research, doing research on artificial intelligence in the industrial technology sector, doing research on Brexit as well. And the funny thing about working in Sweden over the summer was that I would show up, and of course people in Sweden would look at me and say, wow, this guy's out of place here. and they'd get very curious, and I'd say, where are you from? Oh, you're from the States. Why are you here in Sweden? And I said, well, I'm in the MBA MSFS program at Georgetown. And as soon as I said Georgetown, their eyes would just like pop open because they were like, wow, that's a great school. And as it turns out, the person who actually manages the bank is a Georgetown grad. And I did not realize just how well regarded is the Georgetown brand, at least in that part of the world. I traveled to other places in Europe too, and I would say Georgetown, and people's eyes would just like pop open. And it happened in Sweden. So the Georgetown value matters a lot in overseas, and I found that they really want to talk to you more. And at the end of my internship, they actually said they want to hire more Georgetown people. So, I cannot overstate how important it is to take advantage of those resources within Georgetown to find opportunities that sometimes your classmates not even know about.
Yeah, and in your summer internship or in your full-time offer, you are representative of the Georgetown brand, and the Georgetown brand is you. And so to Luis's point, he knocked it out of the park, and so they're like, oh, we want more Georgetown people. And so, thinking about brand, but also with the other things that we talked about that are important in your specific search. So if having a global career, a global mindset is important, there are many places in the world that know Georgetown but may not know another U.S., top MBA program name. So that's something to think about and something that really stays with you depending on, your career, and that alumni base is huge. So, you're not just part of the business school, but the Law Center, the School of Public Policy, Foreign Service, all these programs have Hoyas all over the world. And so, it doesn't matter what school you're at. They're like, you're Georgetown, I got you. Don't worry about that.
Yeah.
Great. So thinking back to your application process, we're going to go back in time now. What piece of advice would you give to the folks listening in who are just starting? What would you tell yourself those few years ago to say, like, it's going to be okay, or I wish I would have done this, what would you have told yourself?
So think back to Georgetown's value of care for the whole person, right? Approach your application process with that kind of mindset. Try to see it as more than just a degree that's going to help you get the next job after you graduate. Think of who you want to be over the course of 30 years in your career, and think of who you want to be in your own community. So once you learn to embrace those different sides of who you are, the more you're going to sound authentic in your application, right? So at first I would think exclusively in terms of career, and I ended up just sounding very robotic and mechanical and kind of sounding like fit for a recruiter. But then I thought, you know what? I also want to launch my own social enterprise. I also want to be a leader in my community. I want to be a leader on a global scale. I want to be a leader in public policy as well. And the MBA is relevant for all these different facets of who I am. And then I was able to be more authentic and, more original. And so I would encourage you to approach your application in that way so that you're not sounding just like everybody else. And secondly, do definitely pay attention to the administrative part of the application, because that takes a lot longer. And I heard of people who went through the application process and they focused so much on their essays and their recommendations that they didn't take care of the application part, and they ended up doing a typo, or they ended up doing things really at the last minute. So start that process very early.
So I have never been more regretful about what I studied in undergrad than when I was applying to Georgetown or any business school.
Really?
Yes. And I'm going to tell you, don't do that. You can't change the past. I had a great GPA, but I completely put myself against other people and what I thought was a fit for business school, how you had to have this particular degree from this particular school. It had to be finance, or it had to be something in STEM, or blah, blah, blah. And here was me coming with a degree in international relations or journalism. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm never going to get in. I wish I didn't study. I wish I could go back, a few years and change my degree. But no, that's horrible. Don't do that to yourself. What I'm going to tell you to do instead is to take what you have and turn it to gold. Be authentic with who you are. Write your essay to be who you are. Don't try to write an essay to fit a certain mold. Let the admissions person see you for you in your interview. For example, if your question is, tell me about a time where you made an impact in someone's life. Don't feel the need to write a professional story. You can write a story about, something that happened to you when you were growing up that's completely different. Yes, it doesn't tell that you're going to have the great quant skills or all of those things, coming to business school, but it shows that you're going to be a different person. It shows that you're a conscientious person, or it shows that you're a person that has a lot of values and morals. These are things that separate you from the admissions pool. So what I'm just going to say is be authentic. Own your story, turn your story to gold, and don't try to change the past. If you, for example, have a horrible GPA or anything, you can't change the past. You just have to take what you have and work with it. So that would be my advice.
I would add to what Nina was saying, and two things. If you don't come from a traditional business background, you have no idea how beneficial that is to a certain extent.
Yeah.
Because you can think things through differently. And I come from a social sciences, liberal arts background, never spent a day in the private sector, never took a single business class before coming to the MBA program. And that taught me how to think conceptually. I look at literature as a way of character development, and that's going to spill over in how you relate to others. And in my internship in Sweden, I said, look, I'm a little different from other people you've hired. I don't come from a traditional business background. I'm actually a social scientist at heart, and I like to integrate that. And to make a long story short, in my briefing towards the end of the internship, they said that my thinking helped their thinking, and I ended up getting a performance bonus. So all these things are very relevant to, you know, who you are. I mean, embrace, like, whatever background you come from that you think is not within the mold of a top MBA. And if you have, like, an issue with your GPA or your test scores, then I can assure you that you can overcome that, and you just have to find different ways to balance. I didn't have the best test scores, but I showed other ways in which I had strong quant skills.
Those are great points. I mean, we want you to be yourself. We're not looking for a cookie-cutter person. As I mentioned, we have people from so many different backgrounds and walks of life here in the program. We have partnerships with the Peace Corps, now AmeriCorps, all different opportunities for people with different backgrounds and coming from different industries to come and learn business education. And so we have parts of our application that really bring you to life. So the essays, as Nina mentioned, but also the video essay. We really want to get to know who you are, so we ask you in 60 seconds or less to introduce yourself to your cohort. I didn't have to do it when I applied, but now that is standard, and it's becoming more standard across MBA programs, but something that, you know, the admissions committee is looking to see who are you off of the page, not just the GPA, not just the numbers. We want to know who you are as a person and what value you'll add to our class here at Georgetown.
Yeah, and in terms of the numbers aspect, if you didn't come from a traditional background, or if your test scores are weak or your GPA is weak, use this time now, between now and the end of the admission cycle, to go to a community college and take classes on, like, stats, accounting, finance, and at least get a B in them. You can always use those to supplement your application to, like, most top business schools, and just explain to them that, hey, I didn't do well in my, you know, undergrad, or my GMAT or GRE is not that great, but, you know, here's evidence that I could actually do well, you know, in quant.
Yeah, and that's because the beginning of the program is very quantitatively rigorous. And so thinking about it from an admissions perspective, we want to set people up to be successful. So if you're giving us indicators that maybe you're not going to be successful in quant, we don't want to, you know, admit you and then have you struggle. And so we're looking for those positive indicators that can help us say, this person's going to be fine. Even with the tutoring that we provide, the open office hours, the you know, peer support, you know, we know that you'll be okay. And so that is, you know, sort of what that's helping us to see as an admissions committee. Great. So at this point, I want to open it up for questions. You are more than welcome to type them into the chat box, and then we will answer those for you. You can direct it to a specific person, or you're more than welcome just to ask a general question, and we can all pitch in and answer it. So while we're waiting for some of the questions to roll in, I have a couple of more. So what has been one of your favorite experiences at Georgetown as a student?
I would say global business experience, and that's almost everyone's favorite, but for a reason, because in your second year, you're going to travel with a group of your classmates to a country, and you're going to be a consultant for a client, and it's really going to be a consultancy that asks for a semester, but your visit is going to be your midterm check-in. I was consulting with the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai, China, and what a time to, like, be a consultant with the American Chamber of Commerce in Shanghai with all that's going on with the U.S.-China trade war. And I felt like I was kind of at a moment in history, so to speak. I was kind of feeling that a bit, and I got to learn about China. And even though I'm not, like, going to be this China expert, I now am permanently always going to look at the Asia Pacific and have some kind of an understanding of how that's important in the business world and also in the world of international politics.
Great. And Nina hasn't yet done her global business experience, but she will do so shortly. So great, we got a first question. Can you share your favorite moment with your consortium cohort? And then, can you share an impactful class for you, especially not coming from a business background?
Favorite moment with a consortium cohort?
Well,
Nina talked about her baby shower and,
that's
and birthday.
Yeah, and tutoring with the consortium group. I mean, we have many opportunities to go for tutoring here, but when you're with the consortium, it's a different flavor. It's a different flavor, it's a different setting, and you're just free to, you know, ask questions. You don't have to know everything. It's just, I love it, yeah.
I would say the consortium takeover of fall 2017.
Oh.
That was when, around October or September, I don't remember which month, but around this time, people are going to start applying to leadership positions around Georgetown for student government, for clubs, and consortium just cleaned the board. We had like our president and vice president as consortium members, people who were leaders of clubs were consortium members, and people really started to see, oh my goodness, these consortium people really mean business. Like, we are super motivated, and in addition, they're just nice, good people, right? There's not a single person in the consortium who I do not like. Everyone's just like a nice person, and they're very driven, and it showed during that moment. So we've kind of set the bar for other consortium classes. And coming from a non-business background, what was an impactful class for me? I would probably say an impactful class for me was actually finance, because I had to learn how to think quantitatively and how to break things down into their individual components and how to do quantitative concepts over and over and over again, even if it took me longer than the average person. I had to go through that fire, and that actually led me to do well in other quantitative courses. And this is coming from a guy who, for the most of my childhood, I was seen as like not a math person.
What about your most impactful class, Nina?
So I agree with finance. Finance was tough for me. I was like, oh my goodness, am I ever going to pass this? But when I look back now in retrospect, I actually had the best, my highest grade for any class in the fall actually came from finance, but I definitely put in the work for that. But my most impactful class or classes have been my entrepreneurship classes that I have been taking. They've been so eye-opening because there's so many entrepreneurs in the DC area. You wouldn't have known that. And there's so many entrepreneurs who are Georgetown alums. So they come here and they're successful, you know, and you see their foods in like Whole Foods. You see like they have incubators and they're VCs, and they come here and they talk about their experiences, you know, what they did good, what they did bad, what you shouldn't do, starting off as an entrepreneur, different kinds of ways to be an entrepreneur, you know, and how to just not be just a consultant or just work in like finance or just work in marketing, how to have an entrepreneurial mindset. So I think like those have been my most impactful classes, apart from finance.
And I have to put in a plug for all of Melissa Bradley's classes.
Yeah,
because she is
so
phenomenal. Melissa Bradley is a Georgetown alum. She is a Black woman who worked on the Obama My Brother's Keeper initiative. She's just like phenomenal. She teaches a lot of our social impact investing courses. She has started social ventures, closed social ventures. I mean, she's done amazing things, and her classes have really been impactful for me and many of my full-time and part-time colleagues. Next question. Iolani, you mentioned that you graduated from the part-time program last year. Do you feel like you missed out on building relationships and being actively involved in clubs and programs around campus? So deciding between a part-time and full-time program is, you know, definitely something that weighed on me and many of my colleagues, and it is a very personal decision. For me, I knew that a part-time program was what I wanted to do because I didn't want to make a large career switch, so I didn't need an internship. The biggest difference is you don't intern as a part-time student because you have a full-time job. But with the part-time program, you know, you can be as involved as you want to be or not. And I chose to dig all the way in. So I was co-president of the Black MBA Association at one point. I hosted a blackout here on campus for Black Lives Matter. I helped to lead a trek to Tanzania. I joined a trek to go to Israel because I still didn't get enough of global at Georgetown. I was a mentor for women in business. And then as I was in the program, so the part-time program on average takes 3 years, you know, I realized that I was learning in a different way. I was actually applying what I was learning immediately, and so I made sure that my bosses and my managers and my team knew that, and I was able to get promoted while I was doing the program. And so it has been, really great to do that. But for me, I wanted to dig in. So when my friend said, hey, I'm going to start this new club called Hoyalytics or Data Analytics, I want you to be on the board, I was like, let's do it. Why not? Now is the time when you can sort of step back and be introspective and take the time to focus on yourself. And so I really was able to do that. However, I had friends that were like, I don't have time to be in so many clubs, so I'm going to come to class, I'm going to do my cohort things, but then I'm going to go home. It's really up to you, but I definitely don't feel like I missed out on one thing. I was probably too involved because my husband said he didn't see me for 3 years. So. All right, next question. I am interested in learning about how you navigate the balance between required and elective classes to stay well-rounded, but also to focus on your post-MBA goal.
That's pretty easy. So the required classes, you have no choice. You're going to have to take them. You're going to take them in the first year, and the second year you do have some core classes as well. Now for your electives, you need to know exactly what you want to do and what you want to get out of the program. So for me, I didn't take any entrepreneurship classes in first year. I was just trying to get my basic business education in first year. So like take stats and operations and analytical problem solving. Now in the second year, I said, well, I one day want to be an entrepreneur. So I want to take a few entrepreneurial classes, whether that's like entrepreneurship and VC capital, or that's like financial modeling, or just, lean startup principles. So I'm taking those classes now, and then next year I want to go back to strengthen my knowledge in finance. So I'm going to be taking valuation and, like financial modeling and maybe investment banking, things like that. But you craft it how you want it to be. You have to think about your weak areas or areas that you want to strengthen going forward, but you're paying a lot of money to come here. So use your electives to craft what you want to get out of the program. That's what I would say.
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I was thinking about it this morning because I think it's important to understand what you want coming out of the MBA program and where you want to go, and naturally your electives are going to be geared towards that. However, I think there's kind of a danger that by thinking too much into what you're going to recruit for, you miss the bigger picture and you become like a very one-dimensional person. And if there's anything that is going to prepare us for like a 30-year career, especially in times of a lot of change, is your ability to be versatile. So it's not enough just to think about technical skills. You have to think conceptually. You're going to be assessed for your emotional and social intelligence. I would encourage taking classes on those because I think that that's a safe space to learn how to become more emotionally and socially intelligent. And I would also say that as I said, being versatile is going to really be a differentiator for you. And if you're interested in finance, take a class related to marketing and vice versa. I think ultimately you have to create that balance between preparing yourself for the career that you're going to have outside of Georgetown when you graduate and the career and life you're going to have for yourself 20 or 30 years after.
Definitely. And one thing that, to think about with Georgetown is that we are a general management curriculum. And so we don't force you on a track or a concentration. And I found with many of my full-time friends that, maybe they did an internship and it wasn't what they anticipated. They didn't like it. And so when they came back in the spring semester the fall of their second year, they were able to pivot much more easily because they weren't forced to take specific courses. And so, to Nina's point, you really craft what you want to do. Another thing to note is that you can start taking electives in the spring of your first year so that you're ready for that summer internship. So if you really need that valuation course up front, you can do that or not. And so we allow you to do that as well. All right, so last couple questions. For the video essay, did you choose a single story to tell, or did you talk overall about who you are? So the prompt is introduce yourself to your cohort. Do you guys remember what you put in your videos?
Yeah, in my video, I said I was this person who was doing a bunch of things that I ended up not having time for in my first semester. But I think the main part of my story, though, in the video was saying this is where I come from. These are things I'm passionate about. I really want to be active in politics and campaigning, but naturally in first semester, you're not going to have any time for that. But the narrative was there. And that's the most important thing. Try to be a whole person, right? and talk about the things that you're passionate about, and that may change. And don't worry about your video being super fancy. Like, it really is not going to matter at all. I had just a simple smartphone camera. And finally, definitely do the video in advance, because when I was doing my video, I had a technical issue and it crashed. And thankfully, it was 4 days before the application was due, because I knew there was going to be a technical issue. And imagine if I did that, 12 hours before, I would not have had enough leeway to solve through that problem. So definitely take time to do it early, because you're going to have to do multiple takes, and you're going to have to deal with the technical issues of uploading as well.
I would say think in terms of being a multidimensional but cohesive person. So I started off by telling, about who I was, where I came from, but there are also many aspects of me that I wanted to highlight. Yeah. I wanted to highlight that I had a child, so my child was featured in the video. I wanted to highlight that I had spent a lot of time doing international development work, or women empowerment work. I had some video of some of the things I had done in Nigeria. I put that in the video. I also wanted to show that I love to swim and I love doing yoga. So I had videos of myself swimming and doing yoga as well. But then at the end of the day, what's the end of the story? What ties everything together? Why am I even doing this video? Well, I'm doing this video because I want to come to Georgetown and I want to impact, whatever it is your end goal is. And I was really, I had a very serious demeanor for that part. So yeah, you've seen all these different aspects of me, but here is why I'm actually doing this video. Mm-hmm. So as I said, multidimensional, different aspects of you, but cohesive. Yeah. So that's what you want to share in your video.
Great. Yeah. So how have you both taken advantage of DC in your time here at Georgetown?
Yeah, so I had an opportunity to intern at the Overseas Private Investment Corporation. I worked in the structured finance division, and that has opened a lot of doors for me, in addition to being a very educational opportunity. Because I had that internship, I was able to get my summer internship at the bank in Sweden, and I just finished 2 interviews with 2 major financial firms, and I had that opportunity through OPIC, and that's just me specifically. You may want to do something else, and I'm telling you, Washington, D.C. is such an epicenter, not only for public policy careers, but also private sector careers. And it's kind of going to be up to you to be proactive, work through your career center, and identify where in D.C. can you do those in-semester internships. And on a more personal level, I mean, D.C. has a lot of art and history and culture, and these may seem irrelevant to business, but I can assure you that being a well-rounded person is going to serve you well, not only just to make life more personally interesting, but it's going to make you a more multidimensional business leader. So take time to go to the Smithsonian or the JFK Center. It's out there. And yeah, also just great social opportunities as well.
Yeah, I'm probably not the best person to answer this question, because most of my first year was spent just trying to navigate business school and be a mom at the same time. So I didn't really have time to do anything outside of campus. But something that my family and I do is go to the museum. We love going to the museum. We love taking our daughter to the museum. We visit churches as well. And, that's just how I take advantage of DC. I also speak another language. And for me, being in DC was another way to improve my French. So sometimes, you find me in French community meetings, or just hanging out with people who speak French. But that's my way of taking advantage of DC. I do want to do more. I definitely want to do more. Hopefully, I will have the chance to. But that's how I take advantage of DC.
Yeah, and coming from New York, I was a little bit nervous about coming to DC, because I was there's so much art and culture, but I found that here. So we mentioned the Smithsonian Museums. They're all free, and we call it the Blacksonian as colloquialism, but the Smithsonian Museum for African American History and Culture is amazing. There's an embassy day that happens here in DC where all the embassies open up and you can go inside and learn their history and culture and music and food. And actually, I'm half Bahamian, and so when I first got to DC, I went to that embassy day and I met people at the Bahamian embassy. I didn't know that much about that side of my culture, and now I'm always at embassy events. I'm in their young leadership board. We did a huge fundraiser for Hurricane Dorian, and so I wouldn't have actually had that if I hadn't come to DC, to be very honest. But it's not just DC, it's also the DMV. So we call it DC, Maryland, Virginia for a reason, because, you know, with my cohort, we went out to a winery in Virginia. There's so much going on in Baltimore that's just a hop, skip, and a jump away, and so we get to take advantage of all of that being here.
Can I just add one point to that? So, you know, Amazon decided to have their second headquarters here for a reason. There were cities across America that were tripping all over themselves, and yet Northern Virginia got selected. And that's not an arbitrary reason. It's because there's a wealth of human capital, of infrastructure, and of just educational talent overall that makes the DMV area really like a financially wealthy place, but also a very dynamic part of the country. And so being here at Georgetown, you have special access to all of that.
Yeah, and if you like classical music, the DMV area is a great hub for classical music. I'm also from New York, so I was like, are you serious? That exists here? But it does. The Kennedy Center hosts the National Symphony Orchestra, and the equivalent of that in Baltimore, has the Baltimore Symphony Orchestra. But I also want to talk about entrepreneurship. DC has a huge startup culture. A lot of people don't know that, but apart from like the West Coast, this is another like similar hub, you know, to the West Coast. It's just the attitude is different here. People are more collaborative. They're always like hackathons and like, you know, incubators and accelerator programs going on. Sometimes you just go there and just listen to these different entrepreneurs just talk. So if that's your thing, you'll be very well at home here.
Definitely. And our last question, this one's for you, Luis. Was there a lot of overlap between fellows in the consortium and MLT's MBA prep? And then specifically, what was it like balancing the two programs, and how would you recommend interested candidates going about doing both? I will say that the majority of folks going through MLT's MBA prep program do end up applying to the consortium because in terms of overlap, there's overlap with programs. So for instance, Nina is a consortium and a Forte Fellow. Luis is part of MLT and consortium because they happen at different points in the cycle. So MLT, you do MBA prep the year before you apply to business school, whereas consortium is when you're in it. And so, yes, there is a lot of overlap with people that are in both of those programs.
Yeah, and there's also a program called Professional Development Program, which I'm a part of. And it's like MBA prep, except you're going to be guided through your 2 years there. And I find that they're complementary with each other. I find that I have double the network, double the career coaching, and double the career recruitment opportunities because I'm doing MLT, PD, and because I'm doing consortium as well. So definitely pursue that. Pursue Forte as well, if you know, that fellowship applies to you. And the second part of your question, how would I recommend interested candidates going about doing both? It depends on your risk tolerance. If you want to apply to 2 degree programs at the same time, you can, and it may work, but I just didn't have the capacity. So I ended up applying to the MBA program and then choosing to apply to MSFS after my first semester. And that means doing a lot of networking ahead of time. I would go to the School of Foreign Service, make myself known. I would sit in on classes just like you would for an MBA prep. And in my first semester, I was very much still in application mode. So that actually had implications for me choosing not to do certain leadership opportunities because I didn't want to be of disservice. And that's a sacrifice that I had to make being a dual degree. We can talk about that separately. I'm happy for you to reach out. Oh, it's Roberto. I know this guy. And so happy to talk to you offline, Roberto, and happy to talk to anybody offline who's thinking about being a dual degree.
Great. And then I just wanted to put in a few plugs. So we have Consortium Fellows, Forte Fellows. We also have a partnership with the National Black MBA Association. And so you can apply, as long as you're a member of their organization, we provide fellowships through the National Black MBA Association as well. So definitely look at that. You can be a double or triple fellow here at Georgetown, which is great because, as we said, you like double and triple your network. And so with that, thank you both so much for joining us and for sharing your experiences. We hope that all of you apply to Georgetown. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to our office. We have consortium liaisons that are specific second-year students who have volunteered to reach out to you and answer your questions. So we're happy to put you in touch. If you want to come visit, you can join us for Experience Georgetown, which is our daily visit program. We have an upcoming Women's Weekend. Our Diversity Weekend just passed, but we're more than happy to accommodate you for class visits and other things if you reach out. And so thank you so much for your time, and best of luck in the application process.
Bye, guys.
Bye.